our attendees here have bought and sold homes before, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. You know a lot of this information, but I'd like to kind of start to educate interns and kind of get back to the basics of what is a realtor's role. Because there's two different roles that realtors can play, of course, with buyers and sellers, and the roles vary considerably. But the most important thing for a buyer or a seller is to initially develop a relationship with a realtor, to have a realtor that's working on their behalf. I remember the story that my parents told, that they were shopping for a home and they had a realtor and they were looking around, and then they saw a house that they loved, that we ended up, I was born in that house, and they called the person whose name was on the sign. And they bought the house through them. Because people just, a lot of times, don't understand that when you're calling the person whose name is on that sign in the front yard, that person, that realtor, is actually working for the seller and has a relationship with the seller and has a commitment to the seller to get them the best prices and terms available. So what my parents didn't know, that because they didn't call their realtor who they had a relationship with, that they might not have probably gotten a better deal that they could have gotten by having someone that was working for them as their buyer's agent. So since then, and that was 30, almost 40 years ago, things have changed in the real estate world, and now there's a lot of documentation. I remember my colleague Scotty Reed, my mentor, said it used to be a handshake, and you'd mail the contract, and you'd get it 4 or 5 days later, and you're good to go. Now, this morning, I'm rushing to get here because I had to make sure that I sent the e-sign off and got it back and sent it to the agent in 2 hours. So it's a really different world. But a lot of that is to protect the buyers and the sellers in the transaction. A realtor's role, we actually have a pamphlet and lots of educational material that describes that, because now what is very important that the National Association of Realtors is requiring is that we need to make sure as realtors that the buyers and sellers understand who we represent, because it can be very, very different. So before showing property to a potential buyer, we have to meet them and explain to them the representation that we have. Are we working for the seller? Are we the listing agent? Or are we working for the buyer? Or are we kind of in the middle helping both parties? And that's one great thing about having a team, because you don't have to wear all the different hats. We have a listing portion of the team who represent our sellers, and a buyer's portion that represents the buyers, which you've very well experienced, if I may use you as an example. Just purchased one of our Team Waller listings through a Team Waller buyer's agent. So it was fantastic in that regard, because had you just called me initially, and I was just my own single realtor as I was many years in the past, and as many realtors are, I would have had to say, thank you so much, I'm really excited that you like this house, let me show it to you, but I can't fully negotiate on your behalf and really work to get you the best deal, or do all the research I can to let you know what's going on in the community, because it might hurt the seller. And I have to tell the seller, hey, I got a buyer for your house, I'm so excited, but I can't help you as much as I would have if somebody else had brought the buyer, because I know this guy, and I have to help him too, and I can't give you the unfair advantage. So that's what happens so many times in the real estate industry, and it's really actually very scary. As a realtor, of course, in the past, when I have had to do that before I had the team, I explain to both parties, and I call in outside realtors in the tough negotiations to make sure everybody has a voice. But still, I believe that having a separate buyer's agent and listing agent is the way to go, and that most of America does not understand that. They think, oh, let me call the person who has it listed, I'll get a better deal maybe. Typically, that is not the case. So that's just a little example about how your realtor's role really can vary, and how it's very important to know who your realtor represents. So that's a little bit of background there. Next, I'd like to talk a little bit about the market trends in Warren County, which are absolutely fantastic. The numbers that I ran from last year, 2014, really indicate that we are in an upward trend. Things are selling. We can't list them fast enough. Team Waller alone yesterday listed 5 homes. We have showings on all but one of the listings as of like 5 hours after they were listed. We had showing requests. So it's really fantastic. We really need to increase the inventory. So I'm spreading the word to let people know that the inventory in Front Royal Warren County is very low. We need more homes so that buyers can contact CVM and get a mortgage and purchase homes. It's also a great time for people who have considered moving up. So maybe they have their first time residence, or they've been living there a long time, and even they want to downsize. People have been paralyzed for many years because the market has been very challenging. And the coinciding settlements, which is what that requires for them to sell something and then buy another, is very, very challenging, and requires a lot of coordination and outside of the box thinking. But the market is really primed for those sorts of sellers and buyers, because the inventory being low and the availability for for people to have that opportunity with interest rates being low to be able to make that move. The affordability of housing is really remarkable. And a lot of people also who are renting don't realize that they can actually purchase for less than what their mortgage payment would be. And as Corey mentioned, take advantage of 100% financing. So many people out there in the community think, gosh, I don't have 20% down. I don't have $5,000 to make this move. What we like to suggest is that people have a few $1,000s so that they're not completely stressed and not eating, while they go through this process, because there are expenses that you have in the home buying process, which you'll learn about like Scott Sanford with the home inspection that he'll speak of. So there are some expenses and earnest money deposit that's required. But I had a closing yesterday where the buyer received back their earnest money $1,000 deposit and literally got into that home by having to invest under $1,000 with inspection and appraisal, which is just absolutely fantastic and an amazing opportunity. So now is the time. We expect the inventory to increase in the spring. So we're making a lot of calls to all of our sellers who said, yeah, I think I want to sell next year, and say, let's get on the market now before the spring rush comes after the weather thaws and the inventory is going to increase, because we want to take advantage of that supply and demand factor and get as much on the market now while the inventory is low to maximize our sellers' buying power. First steps towards buying, obviously speaking with a lender, determining your buying power. If you have a current home, would be having a realtor out to tell you what your home might sell for, so that you know kind of what sort of financial implications the move might have. And then the very first step is sitting down with a buyer's agent and talking about your wants, your needs, your qualification, your lender process, so that they can really learn what is important to you all as buyers. So often, a buyer will call because they see this fantastic house that they want to purchase and want to see it like in 5 minutes, which is okay, it's understandable, but it's very important to then, at least after that showing, have a consultation with the buyer's agent and really discover if you have a great relationship with them and get them in your head about what you're looking for. Get set up on some search engines so that you can be notified as soon as something comes on the market that might meet your needs. It's really important to have that person advocating on your behalf when it comes time to negotiating, for knowing what's been recently listed, and just for working to try to make sure that the